let's talk some college football. Now, first off, a lot's going to go on in this segment. We're going to talk about rankings, especially the college football rankings, some upset alerts, some teams that are on some, again, upset alerts. Because last week I was 3 for 3 in calling the upset alerts, and so let's see if we can keep that trend going, right? Now, I saw a lot of crying, a lot of whining about the first playoff rankings for college football. A lot of whining. Why isn't Cincinnati there? Like, first off, Cincinnati would not be anywhere in the top 5 right now. Like, they just would not. All those teams ahead of them, they would lose. They would lose to Ohio State. They would lose to Oregon. They would lose to Georgia. They would lose to Alabama. And they would also lose to Michigan State. All those teams. And they would probably lose to Oklahoma. They would probably lose to Michigan. They would lose to a lot of teams. Cincinnati is a fantastic story. It really is. A group of 5 team that's undefeated, that's beating Notre Dame, like whatever. Like, Notre Dame's not that good at football right now. Like, if you look at Notre Dame, they haven't blown the doors off anybody good. So, like, who cares? Oh, they beat Florida State. Florida State sucks at football. Okay, we've discussed this multiple times. Back to Cincinnati. What have we seen to say they deserve to be in the top 4? What have we seen? Like, yes, and I get it. Sometimes, like, Alabama right now probably has a little bit of a reputation behind them to why they are number 2 right now. Like, Alabama is a very good program. They've been a good program. They continue to be a great program. Guys graduate and just new guys come in. They just continue to dominate. It's Alabama. But do we expect, like, the point of the college football committee is this. As of right now, it's the top 4 teams get in. Georgia, Alabama, Michigan State, and Oregon, as of this second, are the top 4 teams. Do I think that if Ohio State and Oregon had played again, do I think they'll win? Like Ohio State? Yes, I do. But the reason why Oregon is where they are at is because they have that head-to-head. They went to Ohio State and dominated them. That was then, though, right? It was early in the season. C.J. Stroud was still coming into his own. The defense was still trying to figure out how to play defense in the first place. And now look at them. They are, honestly, if you take away that head-to-head, you have to put Ohio State ahead of Oregon. But you can't right now. You just can't because they did it. Oregon went to Ohio State and beat Ohio State. This is all going to work itself out. So those that are scared about their team making it, like Cincinnati fans, if you're really worried, just take a step back and realize this. If Georgia beats Alabama, if the 2 win out, Georgia beats Alabama, there's no way the committee can put a 2-loss Alabama team. Now, granted, if Georgia and Alabama is a close game, that's the concern that you do have to worry about. Because, well, they lost to the number 1 team in the country, but they have 2 losses. But they're Cincinnati undefeated. But their only best win is against Notre Dame. I think if I'm in the committee, I think you just have to say, listen, we can't put Alabama in. They lost to A&M. They lost to Georgia. Yes, they are good teams. A&M is a number 14 on their committee's ranking. But we can't just put a 2-loss team over somebody that's undefeated right there. Can we? If Michigan State beats Ohio State, you don't have to worry about Ohio State anymore because the committee will not put them in. It's a 2-loss team. Granted, they will have 2 losses against 2 teams in the top 4 at this time. It's a big deal. But I still think if you're the committee, we can't put 2-loss teams in just because of who they are, right? It's tricky. But this is why I'm not worried about, like, if I'm a fan of any of these teams, first off, I'm not getting excited. Like, oh, we're number one. Like, for Georgia. Like, dude, there's still at least 4 games left, plus the SEC championship game. And, like, we still have a lot to play for. It's all going to work itself out. Now, this is why, again, it has to increase from 4 teams. There's always going to be that one team that just, like, this is how it's always going to be. Number 5 is always going to complain about not being top 4. A&M, in my opinion, last year should have been in over Notre Dame. I've always said this. They were the better team than what Notre Dame actually was. Okay? But they always had that one and never got in. But when this whole thing was made, it was for the little guy to get in. No, it wasn't. It was just more Power 5 teams getting in. And usually the same teams. Bama and Clemson seemed like they were always in it. It didn't matter like who got in and who didn't, or as far as like the group of 5, no one was getting in for the group of 5. It's not about the group of 5. It's literally how many more Power 5 teams can we get in there. Now, they should obviously increase it, make it, in my opinion, 8 or 12. You can have the Power 5 conference winners, and then you have some at-large teams like, I don't know, like maybe the runner-ups in the conference games. I don't know. But more opportunities for other teams out there to get in. Because if you do 12, now you're looking at Georgia, Bama, Michigan State, Oregon, Ohio State, Cincinnati, Michigan, Oklahoma, Wake Forest, Notre Dame, Oklahoma State, and Baylor. And who's number 13? Auburn. Auburn's going to complain that they should have gotten in, right? It's always going to be like this. But Cincinnati, don't worry yet. When it gets to week like 11 or 12, then you should worry a little bit. But let the season play out. It's still time. Speaking of games, and more games coming up, I want to give some of my week 10 upsets, okay? And teams that should be on upset alert. First off, I like North Carolina against Wake Forest. People can say, whoa, they haven't played that good this year. Yes, but I still believe North Carolina at home behind Sam Howell will play some inspired football. I think they want to try and get an upset. I think Mac Brown will try and get an upset to get the win, just to feel good towards the end of the season. And then Liberty takes on Ole Miss. That's gonna be a fun one to watch. I'm gonna go with Liberty in that game though. I think Liberty on the road, Coach Freeze on the road as well. I think that's gonna be kind of cool to see him back there in Ole Miss. I don't know. Just watch out for that one. And then actually, the last one I'm gonna talk about too, when it comes to the upset alert, I'm gonna go with what's it called? I'm gonna go with Purdue over Michigan State as my other upset alert. Reason why I think Purdue, they're hit or miss. Either they show up, especially if it's at Purdue, either they show up and they come ready to play, or they just don't. Can you imagine though if like Michigan State does lose to Purdue, what does that now do for the rankings? Does that put Michigan State below Michigan? And how far do both teams drop? Because it's such a domino effect, right? Purdue beats Michigan State, now Michigan State goes down, but now Michigan has to go down because Michigan lost to Michigan State. It's a tongue twister. It's a domino effect. And now for the top 25 matchups, which there's only like one, and that's matchups between Texas A&M and Auburn. I picked Auburn last week to beat Ole Miss, and they did. I'm going to go with Auburn again. I think Auburn has a lot more to play for compared to what A&M does. And I've said this before. Auburn knows if they can just win out, beat Alabama, they will make it into the SEC championship game. That's what's ahead of them. So I'm going to go with Auburn to go on the road. It's tough to play at Texas A&M, but I'm still going to go with Auburn on the road to take down Texas A&M.